Hi, so this is the first video I've made in quite a while. A lot's been happening, and normally I would have shared quite a few videos by now on my weight loss journey, but this time this video is about a different type of loss, and so I really just wanted to do a video about my experiences with COVID and loss. So I'm going to try not to cry in this video. It's not what it's about. It's not what I don't want to be getting all emotional, but I feel like I've cried so much the past couple of weeks. So hopefully I can just share these experiences without getting emotional. So yeah, it's 10:30 at night and I've decided that now's the time to share this video. It's a video that I've been thinking about the past wee while. I think it's really important to share all these experiences, especially with COVID, and especially with the new variant and stuff going on at the minute. But I'm not here to, say whether you should or should not get your vaccine. That's entirely your own choice. But I just want to share my experiences of not only having COVID, how we got it, how I experienced living with it, and yeah, loss. Sad loss. So yes, where do I start? So my little sister was going into hospital to have an operation done. It was quite an invasive surgery she was having, and she was told that she shouldn't be lifting stuff, like she wasn't even to lift a kettle for the first wee while, and that she would be recovering for quite some time after this operation. And she's got 2 young kids, so she lives on her own with 2 young kids. And so we'd all kind of agreed in the family that we would all do what we could to help. So it was agreed that my mum and my stepdad, Frank, would watch the boys, because the boys absolutely love going to stay at their granny and papa's, especially their papa's. So that was the deal with that they would go and stay there for the first week, and in the second week my sister Heather would come and stay at my little sister's to help look after her and like get the boys ready for school and stuff. And I had agreed that I would drop food off and any lifts back and forward to the hospital and stuff. So we'd all kind of got this worked out that this was going to happen. So the first week, that's exactly what happened. They went to stay with Granny and Papa. My little sister, I went up and took her food. She was quite happy just to be in bed with no kids to look after and kind of got on with it. The second week was going okay, so the kids had been dropped back, and my sister Heather went over to stay with my nephew Jack, and they were there, looking after the kids, getting them ready, bathing them, all that stuff. Jack was helping keeping them entertained. And then one night, it was just one day, and I thought, I haven't heard from my sister all day. Like, it was saying on her Facebook Messenger that like she'd been active 4 hours ago, then 5 hours, then 6 hours, and I was like, what's happening here? Because she's always on Messenger. That's how we all communicate in the family. So I was like, right, something's wrong here. So I messaged my sister, my other sister, and said, is she all right? Is there something wrong? She never got back to me for a while either. And then she did, and she said, oh, she hasn't moved. So my little sister's the one that had the operation, Vicky. So she said she hasn't moved all day. She's hardly drank anything. She hasn't eaten. The sweat is pouring off her. She's shivering. And I was like, phone an ambulance. But she didn't want to phone an ambulance because my wee sister can get quite, annoyed. Because she's really quite independent. But I said to so I went round there and I phoned an ambulance because she just had an operation a week ago. This could be an infection. So when I went round, I had to phone my mum and ask if they could come and collect the boys again. And they said, yep, absolutely, they would come and do that. And we knew the ambulance was going to be quite some time because there was just so much delays. So my mum and Frank came round, and Frank looked awful, like really awful. Looked like he had a really bad cold. His eyes were watering, like he just did not look good at all. So they were getting the kids ready to take back round the road, and I think just to go, they were just planning on going to bed. You know, and Frank had sort of like kissed my hand, and he was like, "Oh, I really miss your company." It's just the now, because obviously I miss our wee Saturdays, but obviously even once the kids are at school, we could maybe meet up during the week instead of the weekend. I was like, oh, that'd be great. And then I think it popped back round about half an hour later because the boys had left some of their wrestler toys that they like to play with. But I heard him coming up the stairs. His breathing was just awful. So Frank has myeloma, and he also has Crohn's disease. And his myeloma had recently become really quite active, and it started chemo. Actually, it started chemo it was either the week before or the week off getting the boys. So it didn't look good. So they went round the road, the ambulance came, took my sister to hospital. So my other sister stayed there that night in case she was getting back. She did get back, she got back at like 1:30 in the morning, but she'd already told me before she went, don't bother waiting up, I will get a taxi. Don't be daft, don't go to your bed, don't wait up to bring me back for the hospital. So that's what she did. And they pretty much said, you know, it was probably just her body finally reacting to the operation. She was just exhausted and stuff. Now, interestingly, they didn't do a COVID test on her. So that was on the Thursday that I'd had to phone the ambulance. Friday, she was back home. And I had said, my mum had been messaging saying, oh, Frank's really not well. He's really shattered and he's really feeling it. So I'd said to her, look, if you need me to come and get the boys and take them back to their mums, but I'll stay with her and help look after the boys, then that's what I'll do. But they kept saying, no, we'll leave it to Monday. But Sunday morning, my mum texted me really early and said, can you come and get the boys? Frank's in hospital. So I was like, yeah, I'll come and get them straight away. So I came and got the boys, took them round to my sister's, and I said, right, just you still need to rest, but I'll be here to like feed them and stuff. And then while we were there, my mum phoned to say, bad news, the hospital phoned, Frank's got COVID. So then we were a bit like, oh damn, we've all kind of been in close contact. So I told my mum to do a lateral flow test, and me and my sister did one there and then. Hers came back positive, mine was negative, and she told me to go home. Like, she said, I'll be absolutely fine, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to bath them, I'm not going to do anything silly, I'll stick their dinner in the air fryer and we'll just lie in bed. So I felt a bit like, okay, because I've got obviously my underlying health issues, one being lung disease. So she sent me home, and I said, right, on the understanding, if you need anything, let me know, you know, like my son will come round, and anything that needs doing that's a bit heavy or whatever. So I came home, and I thought, well, my lateral flow's negative, I felt fine. And then I think it was a Tuesday morning, I was sitting at my desk doing some PhD work, and I thought, I started getting a bit of sore throat, and I thought, right, I'll do another lateral flow test. And I didn't really think much of it. I did it, sat it to the side, I was doing my PhD, and I just glanced over at it, and I was like, oh wait, that's like a really, really faint line, but it's a line, it's there. So I then ordered a PCR. My sister ordered a PCR. So she'd already done a PCR for her and the boys, and I'd collected it, taken it to, posted it. I'd ordered one for my mum, taken it down to her, but she did it wrong. So she did the test, but she didn't register it or anything. So I had to order her another one, but mine had came, and my son, because he had been round at my sister's as well. So because she'd done hers first, a few nights later, or next night, she messaged to say that her PCR was positive, and so was the boys, who are like 2 and 5. So those were positive too, and my other sister, obviously I'd contacted her to say, that's my lateral flow positive as well, you should order. So she did a lateral flow on her and her son, and they were negative, but she still ordered the PCR. So then the next day my PCR came back positive and my son's came back negative, but he's already had COVID a few months before. And I didn't catch it from him at the time, but this time round we just all got it. So it turns out Frank had it, my mum had it, my little sister had it, my big sister had it, my 3 nephews had it, I think my other niece had it as well, yeah, and I had it. So we all had to go into isolation, which meant we couldn't help my sister. Frank was still in hospital and he was really struggling with his lungs, just with his breathing. He was struggling with that, so they were giving him oxygen. But when I'd gone up to collect my mum's PCR the second time round, I was like, just do it, give me all this stuff, I'll register it and get it sent away. She burst into tears at the door, and I gave her a big hug and I was like, what's wrong? Tell me what's wrong. And she had said that the hospital had rang to say they're very, very worried about Frank. Basically, she said she thought they were preparing her for the worst, and she didn't think he was going to make it. Like my mum said, I don't think he's going to make it. So it was just so upsetting. Every day, like every time a text went, because my mum's the only person that really texts me, and Domino's, but no, my mum's like the only person that texts me. Everybody else like will contact me on Messenger. So my mum, every time my phone, like a text went, I would be like, oh, is this going to be bad news? So emotions it was a complete roller coaster. Some days, because some days he would phone my mum and she would be like, oh, he sounded really positive, and he sounded like, you know, he thinks he's going to be getting it and maybe by the end of the month. So sometimes I'd be like, there's hope, he's going to be fine. And then other days, oh, the doctor would speak to her again and say, you know, we've never known anyone with myeloma to survive COVID. So during that time, how I felt with COVID. So like I said, to start with, I had a really, really sore throat, and it was really sore. But my painkillers that I get for my other conditions, that was taking the edge off it. I felt like, considering I'm the one with lung disease, I felt like I coped better with a cough than my sisters did. But one of my sisters smokes, and my other sister only stopped smoking a wee while ago, even though she doesn't really smoke much anyway. Whereas I was just finding if I was getting a bit of a cough, I would like have some thick soup or something. I just felt like it was coating it, and I was like trying not to give in to the coughing. So I didn't have much coughing fits. I definitely felt ill. Like when I was standing, I was like, I'm not feeling right. But I'd say overall I've probably felt worse with a really bad cold. I did lose my taste and my smell, so that was a bit odd and crap because I'll just love food. So yeah, that was a bit rubbish, but it didn't last too long. I think it only lasted about a week and a bit at the most. And you could still taste some things, like if it was something was really sugary, like if you were eating a cookie, you could taste that you were eating something sweet, or if you were eating something salty, you could taste the salt, but you just couldn't taste like the flavours of the cookie or whatever it was you were eating with the salt. So yeah, so there was all the emotions going on. There was the feeling, not feeling 100%, isolating. I'm trying to think if there was any more like symptoms. I felt like that was it really. Sore throat, a bit of cough. We all experienced coughing up not very nice stuff. So we all had a bit of that, but again I felt like I had that less than they did. Yeah. And then my mum phoned me. So I had just sat down, it was a lunchtime. I just sat down to watch a wee bit of telly with a cup of tea, and my mum phoned me crying. And we're not really people who phone, we text or that, so whenever there's a phone call, you always know it's something. And my mum phoned crying, and she said that the hospital rang and said that he wasn't going to make it. And that we could go up and see him, which was, I'm still so grateful that that happened, because it's been hard to accept just, you know, 1 minute, like how can somebody not be there anymore? It's like the first time I've really experienced losing somebody. So I said to my mum, right, I'll be there straight away. So I went down and got her. We went through to, because he'd been moved up to intensive care. He had the big mask on, the big oxygen mask that was forcing air into his lungs. He could not like function without this. So we went up to the hospital, and that day everyone was lovely. Everyone up there was so lovely, so thoughtful. They were so respectful of Frank. I think, so what they thought was that the first day that he wasn't going to make it, and that we would be there until the end, but turned out we spent 7 hours there with him that day. And he was, you know, while we were there, he video called, they arranged a video call to my nephews, my little nephews, because he's like, they're just, the bond between those kids and Frank is just amazing, and it's so heartbreaking. But so he managed to do a video call with them, and we arranged for him to do a video call with his brother. So, you know, we were able to say what we wanted to say to him. He was still with it. The nurse had said, look, he's still got a bit of fight left in him, so we need to send you home. We don't have the facilities to, like, keep you here. We won't be able to feed you or stuff because of COVID as well. Like, and they gave us the proper masks. So, you know, I was already feeling ill by this point, but it was like 7 hours. So we were allowed to go and sit with him for 7 hours, talk to him, all that. And then they said that we'd go back in the next day. And by the time I got home, it was like 9 o'clock at night, after 9 actually, probably closer to 10, with the instructions that we take everything off that we've wore that day, put it in a bag, leave it there for like a week before we wash it. We were to isolate for 42 hours, which then changed to 10 days. But because I was so dehydrated with the mask, with the emotions, with the constant crying, just the whole upset, I got one of my migraines that night. Oh, that's what I got at the very start as well. At the very start, the first day symptoms of COVID, I had a really bad headache, but I get really bad migraines, and the headache with COVID wasn't as bad as the migraines that I get. I was still being sick that day, but that night I got back from hospital. Also, I took my mum home and did everything they said. I bagged up all my clothes. I went straight in the shower. Then I scrubbed all the handles in the house so that like my sons didn't touch anything. And it's got to be so careful because of all the air, like the machines in ICU, and you know it's coming out, all these breathing machines and stuff. So we had to be extra careful. But because of all the upset, that was me. Migraine kicked in and couldn't stop being sick. So I had to message my sister and say, look, I can't take her up. I can't take mum up to hospital tomorrow. I'm too ill. I just can't. I can't stop being sick. So she took her back up the next day and dropped her off, which I'm glad, because my mum should have been with him that final day on her own anyway. So she got to be with him when he passed. And I'm so grateful for that, because I think it's helping her cope with it a bit better, because if she had just, because even I was struggling with it, and I was struggling just to understand how somebody just can't be here anymore. But Frank was like her whole world, so everything they did together. Her whole world revolved around Frank. So I think if she had not been allowed to go in and spend time with him and be there when he passed, I don't think she would have gotten over it. I really don't. So we've spoke about it since, and we're both agree that we're so grateful that we got to see him and spend time with him. So yes, it's been such a horrible time. Really, really heartbreaking. So such a loss, and it's not even like losing that whole person. It's losing all the things that person brought to your life. You know, that's, I don't know how many hugs that I've lost in a week now. I'm not going to cry, because every week on our wee cafe dates, he always gave me a big squeezy hug when we first met, and then a big squeezy hug when I was going home. So that's, I'm losing hugs. It's just so much. And my heart breaks for like my nephews, just because how do they get their head around it? Like the wee one keeps saying, when is Papa coming back from being dead? Because he just doesn't understand, and I'm glad he doesn't understand. But he's still like, where's Papa? And his brother keeps reminding him, no, remember, Papa died. His brother's only 5, and again was his world. So he's heartbroken, and it just makes me really sad for him. And he did say, they actually went and stayed at my mum's for the first time on Sunday, and he did say, you know, I wish Papa never went to that place. So we don't know if he means hospital or heaven, but I'm guessing he means heaven, because he would have said hospital if he meant hospital. So it's just really sad. It's such a loss. We went, because normally every Saturday we go to the cafe and at Asda, and we would get, Frank would order a big breakfast, and we would get whatever we were getting. Then we'd go around the shops, and then Frank would always put my shopping away. Like he would always scan it through, wouldn't let me do it. And this week me and my mum went in, and we knew it was going to set us off, because we knew when we told the women there, because Frank always spoke to the women who worked there, like everywhere he went. You know, like he was so friendly, so chatty. You know, all right, I'll see you there next week. What's happening with you the day? Like he would speak to them. Really, really, really friendly. And we knew it would set us off, because we knew they would be upset. So we were in the car on the way there going, right, we're not going to be upset. We're not going to be standing bawling at Asda Cafe. We're feeling a bit stronger, like, come on, it's fine. So we went up, and one of them had said, right, what can I get for you today? So we'd said that we were getting a sandwich and a tea. And I was like, and a breakfast. And she was like, what do you want in the breakfast? And I was like, right, nobody's going to actually be eating the breakfast. It's, he's passed away, and we just want to, like, this is just something we want to do. Don't cry. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. She said, I'm not going to charge you for his breakfast. And so he got a breakfast and a cup of tea, and then we were sitting laughing, because we were like, he would have loved that. He would have loved that he got a free breakfast and a cup of tea. So then one of the other women, so she told like her colleague, she came over and she was like, I am so sorry to hear that. It's such a shock, I can't believe it. And she started crying. And then my mum started crying, I started crying. So I know the next time we go in, like, there'll be different, like some of the ones that weren't like working that day, I know that they're going to be really nice. But my mum says everywhere she goes, you know, even when she goes to get her eyebrows done, the women had said, I'm so sorry. Like everywhere she tells, she's having to tell, or they're noticing that she's there without him. So many people loved him everywhere he went. So it's such a loss. It's a massive loss to my mum, huge loss to me, to those boys, and just for all the people that kind of knew him, because he's just one of those guys that was just so super happy and super friendly. And he basically lived with my mum and the boys, and he would do anything. And just before that, the last time he was round as well, he'd said that. He said, I didn't need anything in life, I've got you, that's all I need. So it's just a shame. It's such a shame that he's not here. And it's still, you know, there's days where you feel alright, and then there's days where something reminds you, and it's horrible. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But me and my mum are finding comfort just chatting about him all the time. We're laughing about stuff that he'd said, remembering wee silly things that he did. And she's getting comfort in that, so I'm glad. And I am as well. It's just sometimes it's just that way where I'm like, how can he not be here anymore? Like, how's that? how did that happen? So yep, that's been my journey with COVID. And I've been vaccinated 3 times. So I've had 3 vaccinations. And I will be getting another booster as well. So I definitely think having those vaccinations, especially with my underlying health conditions, I think that's definitely what's helped me, stopped me getting so ill. I mean, Frank was different because his underlying, you know, his cancer was very active. He had just been given lots of chemo. So, you know, he had a lot going against him. But I thought I would share this video, and if you have any questions, please feel free, and please be really, really safe, and, you know, wear your masks. And I know I said I wasn't going to be like, oh, I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I'm not, but even I had started getting a bit lackadaisical with it, because that's been like nearly 2 years and not once got COVID, and then all of us got it just because we were in helping my sister. Like, we were all, you know, kids was going between us, and I think it was probably the kids that got it for school, because they were the ones that were getting like cold symptoms first. So that's probably what's done it. And my sister's constantly getting messages from the school to say, you know, somebody in the school has had COVID, so just to warn you of the risk. So I know that from now on I'll be going back to being super careful. And even if I'm meeting up with people now, I'm saying, right, if there's going to be a couple of us there, can you all do your lateral flow test first? Like, I don't want to take any chances, especially like my daughter's just had a baby. It's the first grandchild. That helped. That was less than a week after Frank died, so it definitely helped bring some joy back. But she hasn't been vaccinated yet because she was pregnant. She didn't want to take the vaccination, so she was pregnant, which is, I totally understand that. So she's now not vaccinated. So anytime we go anywhere, I just say, please make sure you've done a lateral flow and you wear a mask, because I don't want them getting ill. And like the doctor said at the ICU, I know that you've all had it, and I know you've all been isolating, but there is still that risk that you can get it again. So it's just about being super careful. So that's my experience with COVID, and that's my experience of loss. I hope you found this useful in some way. And like I said, any questions, leave a message in the comments. I'll get back to you. So just hope you all stay safe and have a really happy holiday, and see you next time. Good night.